Hi, welcome to the Outer Wing. I'm Mark Stevens at Zero Hanger headquarters. This is the fourth edition of this hard-hitting show, of course brought to you by TABtouch. Real punters play here. And as usual, I'm joined by the journalistic legend himself, Digby Beacham. Let's get to it.
Could a mullet with tightly tapered sides reduce wind resistance, allowing for faster acceleration off the mark? Now that's something to think about. What are you really gambling with?
Well, Diggers, how's the week over in Perth? I mean, a couple of winning teams. We haven't seen that for a long time over on the Outer Wing.
A very good day to you, Steve-O. Yeah, right. It's we don't know what to do with ourselves. If you're a West Coast and a Fremantle fan, you're celebrating victories on the same weekend. It has been a rare occurrence in recent times, that's for sure.
And the Dockers, they look powerful. I mean, they almost got it done down at Geelong. But can we be talking Flagmantle at the moment?
I'm not sure if we can talk Flagmantle, Steve-O, but you know me, I'm all in. I'm all in with Fremantle. I think this is a very, very even and deep squad that they've been able to assemble. And what we have seen this season thus far, again, small sample size, that I'll grant you, but they're scoring heavily and they're playing the brand of football which I think a lot of people have wanted them to play. They're scoring heavily. They're scoring in clumps. The first two quarters against both Geelong and also Melbourne last Saturday, you don't get much better than that, and it set them up against the Demons. They probably could have gone on with it. We know that they fell in a hole late against Geelong. Geelong had the advantage of playing in the opening round, but I think Fremantle are well and truly on their way.
And Shai Bolton's an interesting one for me, of course, the former Tiger. 32 disposals last week. Now, that's his most since 2023. He looks like finally a better version almost than the Richmond one.
Well, you would have seen him a lot closer than what we did over here when he was at Richmond. He was a dual premiership player that we know. I think he was an All-Australian back in 2022 when he had 80-odd scoring shots. And even last year in his first season with Fremantle, he played, I think, 22, 23 games. He kicked 29, 28, had a heap of tackles. But one thing with Shai is he's a bit of a free spirit when you play him. And by all reports, when Justin Longmuir and Fremantle were looking into Shai Bolton and trying to get him back, Justin was urged by a few people, if you're going to get Shai, you need to remove all restrictions. You let Shai be Shai, and you can't hold him down to perhaps play the way that you require others to play. You let him do what Shai does, and that is be an impactful player. He's cat-like, isn't he? In his effort, you're right, against Melbourne, 2 goals, 30-odd touches, it was elite.
Yeah, I think we forget how good he is. I mean, a time in Richmond there where people were talking up as a top 5 player in the competition, a big money player. So it's a huge get for Freo if they just get everything in place with him.
Yeah, very much so. And look, he's happy to be home, and he's pretty much one of the real senior Indigenous boys there. Now, Sonny Walters has moved on, and a lot of the boys look up to him in the locker room and also out on the ground. And as much as he's not the most extroverted individual, he's quite quiet and softly spoken, Shay. He walks with a bit of a presence, and he's got that swagger on him. And Fremantle are a considerably better football club with him a part of it.
Are they still a little bit nice, though, the Dockers? Can they find a bit more ruthlessness, if you like, percentage-wise? Are they missing out on percentage? Could they really take it to the floor a bit more?
Yeah, they could have. They certainly could have last week. They had Melbourne done so early in that game it was not funny. So they should have won by, respectfully, 12 to 15 goals. It should have been a good old-fashioned thumping at home, warm day, and they had Melbourne on the hop, but they didn't do that. So that's a challenge, and we talk about this competition being fine margins, don't we? That was an opportunity lost. They got the 4 points. They still were able to get some pretty handy percentage alongside their name, but it could have and should have been greater.
Now, what's the talk been like about the prancing pony, Vossi, of course, what happened there? Against the Demons. It was a little bit over the top. We criticised him on our show here, 6 points. And what's the feedback for him been like in Perth?
Well, the feedback from the Fremantle Football Club and the players is, don't you stop being Pat Voss. So you're an emotional, energetic extrovert. Be yourself. Rein in that stuff. He knows that. He's spoken to the players, he's spoken to some of the senior people at the club, and he's apologised, and he's been a little bit remorseful. So I think you can safely say you're not going to see that from Patrick this week and in the weeks ahead. But what you are going to see from Patrick is that effervescent extrovert. And we've spoken about it, Steve. This is a football club full of introverts, absolutely littered with them, laced with them. Patrick Voss is that unicorn. He's something completely and utterly different. And that's what makes him such an invaluable member of this football club.
Yeah, I saw him light it up in person, obviously at Marvel, being a Bulldog fan, what the Dockers did to the doggies there. Second quarter, of course, in that final round game. He ignited it last year just to get them into the finals.
He did. And you go back to that game against Collingwood at the MCG. Pat Voss was enormous. He was immense against a high-class Collingwood defence. So the lad can play, can flat out play. Does he need to park some of the rubbish? And when I say rubbish, it was only that misdemeanour with Harrison Petty. I didn't mind the Ed Langdon stuff. That was a bit of prancing pony with an asterisk alongside his name. But all in all, he brings a lot to this football club. Alongside Josh Tracy, they give them a pretty powerful 1-2 punch forward of the ball.
And what's the coach's demeanour been like this week going into another big one?
Yeah, he's comfortable, he's happy, he's content. He's pretty satisfied with their brand of football and how they're tracking. So they were very good against Geelong, fell in a hole late, made some mistakes. They need to be better than that. And they weren't probably extended in the manner that some would have thought they would have been by Melbourne, but they're 1-1. They've got a very winnable game here against Richmond. The big issue here, Steve, it's a beautiful day today outside. Tomorrow, meant to be lovely as well, but then we're getting Cyclone Narelle come down from the northern part of this state. She's already impacted the Northern Territory, Queensland, and there's the forecast of 50 to 60 mils of rain on Friday and another 50 to 60 on Saturday. So Optus Stadium is going to be saturated.
Yeah, could we see some thunder and lightning? I mean, Narelle, I'm not sure who names these cyclones, but probably could have come up with a better name than that. But it's going to be an issue. We've seen already thunder and lightning hold up a game, in Sydney last week.
Yeah, well, it's Category 2, Category 3. They're predicting landfall, so they're doing all this modelling at the moment. But we are expecting here in Perth to be getting some rain. We're not getting the brunt of it, fortunately. There's other regions of Western Australia which will. But certainly we are going to have a really rain-impacted contest on Saturday.
Now, I reckon the nightclubs will be like cyclones after the dance floors. There'll be plenty happening there after the Eagles had a win. I mean, the supporters must have known what to do. They must have headed straight to the pub.
Well, Steve, to be fair, you've made mention of it when we've chatted here about the crowd and how loyal these West Coast fans are. In excess of 47,000 turned up on the weekend. That's West Coast's first home game. They won one game last year. And North Melbourne, as much as we North Melbourne, have a decent following here in WA, we're not exactly a powerhouse. So they rocked up and they were absolutely treated to a wonderful display. A great fight back, it must be said, from West Coast, because at quarter time they looked in dire straits. North had continued from where they were the week prior against Port Adelaide, 7-2, and you thought, oh, here we go. But some of the kids stood up, some of the senior players stood up. They were very, very good, West Coast. And these kids that we did speak about, Dersma, Shanahan, there's a lot to like about them. Cooper Duff tightly kicked a couple, moves well, ball at the feet. He's still very agile for a big man. Very, very encouraging display by the Eagles.
So is it the new norm or just a one-off? I mean, they seem to have some spark back. It got that sort of fever back, West Coast, where there was a torrent of goals coming, and the atmosphere. It felt like we were back in the glory days.
Yeah, that's a fair call. It really is. Now, is it the new norm? Is it an outlier? We'll find that out in the fullness of time. What I think we're now seeing is something with a bit more substance. There's a bit of a platform here because they've got some good kids, high-end draft picks, and they can naturally play. So they're going to have their ups and downs along the journey. And one thing, as you know better than most, Steve, you've seen a lot of football. The young sides, they struggle against, the better opponents, naturally, but when they travel interstate. So there's going to be some bumpy roads ahead for West Coast with this young group. But we flagged earlier this season about West Coast perhaps winning more than 3.5 games, which was their season win line. I'm confident that West Coast, off what we saw last weekend, they can win their 4, 5, 6 games.
Well, my barometer's Elliot Yo. What a man. I mean, we hadn't seen a lot of this before, for a long time due to his injury. So he's now gone 2 goals plus, if you like, 2 weeks in a row, the first time since 2016. Couple of vintage goals from Elliot Yo. We forgot how good he was.
Exactly right. He was their bull, wasn't he, in their premiership era? He was very, very good. He's a dual club champion, I think. He might even also be an All-Australian. Elliot didn't play a game last year because of injuries. He was also, having some really difficult times away from the ground with the passing of his father. So he's had a great pre-season. He's been able to get back. And as we've touched on, Steve-O, one thing that you will see, and I'm confident of it, and maybe we're seeing it already, Harley Reid is a better player with Elliot Yo in that football side. And Harley Reid's performance last week was a career peak in regards to possessions, and it came off a pretty solid opening to the season against Gold Coast as well.
Yeah, you think he's ready to find another level? Because as I've said on this show before, I think he's underachieved Harley Reid despite all the headlines and all the fanfare. There's other players from that draft that achieved far more in their scrapbook, if you like, to this stage of his career. So hopefully he can find another level. What do you think about him running at Comben like he did after that goal?
Yeah, look, I thought he, in fear of inciting hatred from West Coast fans, I suspect he got what he deserved a little bit there, because as much as he said, I was just going to be running towards Elliot after he kicked that goal, he did deviate towards Charlie Comben, who put the bumper bars out, and he got high contact. Eagles were a little bit upset that there wasn't a suspension handed down to Comben. Look, one thing with Harley is we touched on the fact that his body shape has changed, but he's playing with a bit of a smile on his face as well at the moment. He's quite happy, and I think he's been invigorated by also the younger kids coming in and having an impact as well. And winning helps, doesn't it? So he gets an opportunity along with a lot of these other younger players to ply their trade over there in Adelaide this week against Port.
Well, can you make a case for the Eagles to make it 2 in a row, Diggers? That'd be historic. I mean, the hippie club, is that still going in Perth? They'll be going off on the dance floor.
It's still there, Steve-O. You and I have been there previously.
Trouble
a few
place.
brain cells.
Yeah.
Look, I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if they beat Port over there. Now, Port are missing their skipper in Connor Rosey. But again, as I touched on, some of these interstate sides, when they have to travel interstate, they do struggle if they're young. And West Coast list profile says they're still pretty young. Milan Murdoch won't play. He's going to miss 2 or 3 weeks with a hamstring strain. We know that he's been a revelation since being called up late in the preseason, kicked that sealer last week. So he'll be missed. I would think Port are winning that game by 4 or 5 goals, if I'm to be brutally honest.
Yeah, that's the reality of it. It's going to be hard for that young team to back up. So let's look at a couple of betting options now, Diggers, if you like, for TABtouch. Real punters play here. What do you like, first of all, with Freo this week?
Yeah, well, if this rain does come, Steve, I think scoring is going to be really, really difficult, and there's going to be a lot of stoppages. So as a result of that, I'm having an investment on Caleb Sarong to rack up 30 plus disposals and game total to be under 151.5. It is a very low number, but as I said, we do have a cyclone approaching, literally, and that bet with TABtouch is $3.75. And for a West Coast perspective, I'm taking Port Adelaide to win, and Jason Horne-Francis and Jake Waterman to kick 2+ goals at $3.65.
I like it, Diggers. I'll go back to the tape. I'm going to have a bet on those with TABtouch. Real punters play here. It's been a great episode again of Outer Wing from HQ of Zero Hanger. We'll be back next week.
You win some, you lose more. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.